yesterday, it was a crucial moment, a crucial meeting regarding indirect negotiations, at least from the Iranian side and also the U.S. side between Tehran and Washington. Can we look at this meeting and after its end as a positive sign in order to reach a new agreement between both sides regarding the Iranian nuclear program?
Well, first of all, notwithstanding the fact that I am highly critical of Trump on a number of issues, principally revolving around his support of Israel, nonetheless, we should rejoice with the knowledge that Trump is not a warmonger. He is not bloodthirsty. He does not support war. That is quite remarkable, given that for the last 30 or so years, the world has had to endure one American president after the next, who has embarked on numerous military crusades, resulting in the deaths of millions of civilians, including women and children. So again, we should celebrate the fact that in the White House, there is a president who is opposed to war. Now, moving on to Iran, I am delighted at the fact that Trump's stance on Iran is quite different to his stance on the country during his first presidency. Thus, Trump is now talking directly with the Iranian government. That is very good news for peace in the Middle East and for stability in the Middle East. After all, if this was Biden or if this was Bush or if this was Clinton, etc., the situation would be very different. So I applaud the fact that the Americans and the Iranians are now sitting down with each other and are talking to one another. It will not be an easy task. There will not be an overnight solution, but the very fact that the Americans and the Iranians are sitting down and talking with each other is a very big accomplishment. It demonstrates that the White House is now very different to how it was under Biden or under Obama or under Clinton or under Bush. So we should do everything within our means to support the talks between America and Iran.
Maybe just a meeting, even it was indirect, is a positive sign. But sir, do you think that the U.S. is pressure on this negotiation, or at least enter this negotiation, and they are threatening to use the military, so they have military pressure against Iran?
I have said for many years that I do not believe there will be a war between America and Iran. It would not be in the interests of America, and it would not be in the interests of Iran. The only country which would benefit through a war between America and Iran is, of course, Israel. And the Israelis, through the enormous amount of influence and power they wield in America, are trying to provoke a war between America and Iran. We also should be mindful of the fact that Trump is not entirely in charge of America. Thus, the deep state still controls, for example, the CIA, the NSA, the military, and the State Department. So whilst Trump, like all American presidents, are pro-Israel, I have no doubt that he will resist attempts by the Israelis and their lobby in America to try and provoke a war between America and Iran. But as I said, it would not be in the interests of the Iranians, and it would not be in the interests of the Americans. If there was a war between the two countries, then American military bases in West Asia would be struck by Iranian missiles. And at the same time, Iran would be devastated by a war. So it's not in the interests, as I said, of both countries, but it is in the interests of Israel. So we just have to hope that the Trump administration can resist the attempts by the Israelis to provoke a war, Can it happen? I believe that Trump will tell Netanyahu that war between America and Iran is something that he will resist at all costs.
So the headline in these negotiations and the nuclear program that the US has withdrawn in 2018. But do you think that one of the points in these negotiations, or one of the points discussed, is the Iranian influence in the region, especially after Iran has lost many of its armies in the region? You, of course, remember that in the previous agreement, it was a nuclear program, but on the other hand, the U.S. allowed, even it was indirect agreements, that Iran could expand in different Arab states. Do you think the new agreement could allow reducing the Iranian influence in the region?
I am a firm supporter of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and because of that, I would like to know how it is that Israel came to acquire nuclear weapons. Following on from that, I do not wish to see Iran or any other country in the world acquire nuclear weapons. However, the problem in West Asia is this: because Israel, the most aggressive and dangerous country in the region, has nuclear weapons, this has a knock-on effect, meaning that Iran feels threatened by Israel, and therefore in some quarters in the Iranian government there is a wish for Iran to develop its own nuclear weapons to defend itself from Israel. So this obviously is an issue which will come up in the talks between the Americans and the Iranians. And the Iranians will make it very clear to the Trump administration that Iran does not seek war, that Iran seeks only defense to preserve the Iranian people's independence and sovereignty and to preserve the Iranian revolution. So really, the Americans will have a lot to do to persuade the Iranians that Israel will not directly attack Iran and will not be successful in instigating a war between America and Israel. As I said moments ago, this is going to be a long, drawn-out process between Washington and Tehran. But the very fact they are actually talking to each other as I talk to you now is an extraordinary accomplishment, and it is because Trump is in the White House, his stance on Iran has changed, and because ultimately Trump is not a warmonger.
The question, in other terms, I'm not speaking about Israel, I'm speaking about the Iranian presence in different regions, in Iraq and Yemen, in some previous time in Syria. This is now another situation. Again, the question, do you think we can expect that the Iranian rule will be reduced in the Arab region and this will be a part of the deal? Do you think the Iranian rule could be reduced in Arab regions?
First and foremost, the Iranian government seeks complete defense of its country and its people. That is paramount for the Iranian government. As regards Iranian influence in the Middle East, I believe that the Iranians will tell their American counterparts that there is no reason why the Iranians should not have influence in the Middle East, when of course Iran is a part of the Middle East. They will also point out that if Iran cannot have influence in the Middle East, then why should America or Britain have influence in the Middle East when these two countries are not part of the Middle East? So those are two very compelling arguments which the Iranians will make. But first and foremost, Iran seeks defense for its country. And if Iran does not have any influence in the Middle East, then that will be detrimental to the national security of Iran. And I suspect that Trump understands that.